Alright, hello citizens of the Nigelverse. It is Nigel once again, and this is going to be another movie review. First of all, let me start off this review by saying Happy Mother's Day to all the awesome, amazing mothers out there. Er, uh, and of course the mothers to be as well. You all are awesome and amazing. You are our heroes. We love and cherish each and every one of you. And this year for Mother's Day and also for Father's Day, but that's not till next month, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But this year for Mother's Day, I figured I'd do something a little bit different here on the channel, and hopefully I can make this a yearly tradition. So I decided that I would review one of my mom's favorite movies. So I asked my mom. I polled the audience, and by audience I mean my mom. I asked her what one of her favorite movies is, and she recommended this movie to me. Now, of course, I am talking about The Five Heartbeats. It's now a quick little story when it comes to this movie. This is a movie that almost every time around Thanksgiving time when we would go to my mom's side of the family for Thanksgiving, that had my mom and all her sisters, aka my aunts and everything, and of course my grandma. They would all watch in the other room. Meanwhile, the children weren't allowed to watch this movie because it's a bit up there when it comes to age, and I now know exactly why. But yeah, so we weren't able to watch this as kids, which is kind of ironic because we would be in the other room playing games like Mortal Kombat at when my cousin brought over his PS4, or we would play Mortal Kombat, which is even worse, honestly. But nevertheless, being able to finally see this movie, was it worth the wait? Let's find out. But of course, as always, I'm not professional movie reviewer, analyst, or anything like that. Just a man who enjoys a good time, and I would say, had a really good time with this movie. I definitely would say it's worth the wait, and now that I'm older, like if I watched this when I was younger, first of all, I probably would be it probably would have had a much bigger impact on me. Or maybe that's the wrong wording. I think actually what I meant to say is probably have a bit of a different impact on me. At least he's growing up in my childhood, adolescence, and everything. Oh, uh, but also the thing is, I probably wouldn't have, I guess, understood as much of like the significance when it comes to what the movie's trying to say. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we'll get into it. I'll try my best to explain it. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So if you've seen these reviews of mine before, you kind of already know how this works. But if you haven't, gonna be talking about what I liked and disliked about the movie, while also giving a little plot summary, and we're gonna start off with the plot summary, of course. And I do have the wiki here for reference, since it doesn't show every single thing, so try my best to fill in the gaps in between. But thankfully, it gives kind of a timeline of things, just in case there's any points that I miss. But we start off essentially with the five heartbeats, which is a group of five young men, and it's kind of ambiguous whether or not they're like supposed to be teenagers or at the very least young adults. I think it's kind of implied that they're supposed to be more young adults, if anything. But we have Donald Matthews, who's known as Duck, because of course you know Donald Duck. Then there's Anthony Stone, aka Choir Boy. There's JT Matthews, who's Donald's brother, or I might, he's usually called Duck, so I might alternate between Donald and Duck. Okay, so I think I'll just call him Duck, because that's what he's called throughout the movie. That's his nickname. There's JT Matthews. There's Terrence Williams, aka Dresser, and Eddie King Jr. It's not Eddie Kang, it's Eddie King. But the way he pronounced it and stuff. But yeah, so they're essentially a band. Their band is called all the heartbeat. It's I forget whether or not they're exactly called the five heartbeats or just the heartbeats, but for the sake of for the sake of the plot and for things to be a bit more specific, we'll continue to refer to them as the five heartbeats. So they're a band and has the five heartbeats, and they're performing in a battle of the bands. And although I've actually never been to a battle of the bands event, and I've definitely never performed because as in music, I love listening to music, but how about like perform music and stuff isn't really my thing. But nevertheless, so they perform Battle of the Bands. They do unfortunately come up short against Flash and the Ebony Sparks, but they are still pretty popular with the crowd out, and they're noticed by Jimmy Potter, who's in the audience, and he agrees to. He tries to get them to, he tries to get them convinced to let him manage the group, and he has a little wager going, saying, if they don't win the Battle of the Bands next month, if they don't win the $100 prize for Battle of the Bands, that he will personally pay them out of pocket. And sure enough, they don't win the next month either, but. They are still pretty popular. He does pay up, of course, but they are still pretty popular to the point in where the owner of the club that's hosting the Battle of the Bands wants to hire them. So then that's when the Five Heartbeats officially take up Jimmy as their manager. So, essentially, he getting the group together, having them do the songwriting. The songwriting is mainly done by Duck, and of course, they're taught their moves by Sarge, who was in the army with Jimmy. So he teaches them their moves and stuff, and we see a few, and this is something the movie does quite a bit, and we'll definitely come back to it when we get to likes and dislikes, but a lot of like montages is where we see them over the years. We see them performing like the dance moves as they're being taught the moves by Sarge and we see them with like their album cover shoots, but we're getting there, but but nevertheless, as at another event, hence they're facing a rival group known as Bird and the Midnight Falcon, and so Bird and the Midnight Falcons try to rig it essentially. He try to essentially stack the deck against the Heartbeats. It's there now. The MC is the cousin of one of the Heartbeats. And Bird and the Falcons also convince girlfriend, and that being Bird's girlfriend, to invite her friends to boo. And at first the crowd does boo. Does boo the Heartbeats, so things are going according to plan, especially after a new rule comes up essentially that they have to use the house piano player instead of Duck, who plays the piano for the group. I wonder if Bird has any relations to the Duchess of Queensberry, and if you get that reference. But nevertheless, as they and the Heartbeats end up having none of that with Duck taking over, they wow the crowd, even causing Bird's girlfriend to faint, and so they end up winning the contest. But they also catch the attention of Big Red Davis, who owns Big Red Records, and at first he wants to sign them, but Jimmy and his wife Eleanor, who Eleanor is kind of like, she's kind of wary of the Heartbeats because Jimmy has managed successful groups before, but they end up leaving him, so she doesn't want the same thing to happen again to Jimmy. But nevertheless, Jimmy does manage the group, convinces Eleanor to trust him with the group and everything. But they also know that Big Red is treacherous, and he certainly is, and we'll definitely get to that. But nevertheless, so Red offers to sign him. Jimmy, at first a little wary of it, but sadly they're trying to find right label to sign with. They end up releasing their hit their solo hit and everything, but unfortunately, no one else wants to sign them, except for one group who tries to bring in the Five Horsemen, which is a group of white guys, and it's funny because they literally wear like the Letterman shirts, like your stereotypical movie jock Letterman shirts. They're literally five guys in those exact shirts. They look like they look like an early version of like the Spirit Squad. Man, that's the second wrestling reference in this video. But Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, but I do love wrestling. But nevertheless, so they're kind of forced to sign with Big Red because no one else will take them. So the Heartbeats go on tour, but they experience a lot of hardships, such as like poor conditions, like going from hotel to hotel, as well as racism, including when they're stopped by a cop and they have to sing in order to not be harassed by the cop because the cop says, "Hey, you're a singing group. Why not sing?" And conditions like that really face the heartbeats and everything. But they eventually released their album and. They eventually released their first album, but sadly, he it has white people on the cover of it instead of the Heartbeats. Meaning all of those album shoots were essentially for nothing, which does kind of suck. But that's kind of and I know some people who did take ire when it came to that scene because it felt forced in, but sadly that's kind of how it was back then. But yeah, so things like that do who end up facing the Heartbeats, but the Heartbeats are still finding success as they're getting a lot of hits. They're being on magazines, and I do like how they portray like the magazine and everything. Like have them actually doing like the magazine shoots and being on covers and stuff like that, and show and splice in like fake news articles. Those obviously like fake to us, but within universe to really help sell it. Like they definitely get it across us, and the attention to detail is very nice, I must say. But things begin to kind of unravel and deteriorate for the Heartbeats. We do see the tension between Duck and JT. See things kind of start to unravel between them, including them like fighting each other literally on stage. Siblings fight sometimes, but then we also see Eddie start to slip into some bad habits, some bad drug-related habits, and see him just further unravel from there. And unfortunately, his girlfriend, that being Baby Doll, who is also a singer, he leaves him. So she leaves him, and things just kind of we definitely see the turmoil within the group, and like it's the point where Jimmy goes to Big Red, which it is not mentioned here in the wiki, but I do gotta bring it up. Big Red dangling Flash from the balcony after Flash tries to confront Big Red about his books, giving us one of probably the most iconic lines, at least in the Black community. Remember, Big Red's office hours are from 9 to 5. Man, he'll definitely know it. And somewhere here, a young Suge Knight takes notes, and a young Vanilla Ice just got a chill down his spine. I wouldn't necessarily say young, but I mean, this movie did come out in 1991, but nevertheless, I digress. So, that happens, but Big Red tries to cut Jimmy out of the contract and tries to and tries to like get him away from the heartbeats, and Jimmy's having none of that. And Eddie's all on board and stuff, especially because Eddie, within his drug fueled state, starts to get paranoid that he's about to be replaced in the group. Sound familiar? But we'll get to that. But Jimmy then threatens to expose Big Red, and a lot of what Big Red has been doing, a lot of his illegal activities. He's so which leads to Jimmy accidentally dying. Yeah, Big Red essentially has him killed. As Jimmy gets hit by a truck as he's getting into his car, so unfortunately Jimmy does die, and eventually Eddie fesses up. Obviously he had nothing to do with it, but he kind of knew that Jimmy would be killed, and it was unintentionally because of him. But yeah, so that puts even more strain on the group. Eddie leaves for good. It stops singing for good, and continues to fall further and further into his substance abuse. And his friends, obviously being the other heartbeats, do try to help him out as much as they can, but Sally just falling further and further into that, and Jimmy, he kind of almost becoming a shell of his former self. Meanwhile, there's even more tension between the group as Tanya, that being Duck's fiance, and someone that Duck had met earlier in the movie, but she popped up later on to try to get with Duck, which is you. What I'm not gonna say always bad signs. Sometimes, and sometimes romance does come back around. It's usually nice, but in this case, no, but nevertheless, so Tanya comes back into Duck's life. Duck had been pursuing her earlier in the movie, and I know I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to that, but Duck had been pursuing it. Or the thing is there's quite a few plot threads, which it makes sense to flesh out not just the heartbeats as individual characters, but the struggles that they go through, and then tie it back into the dynamic of the group. But nevertheless, as Duck at first suspects she's having an affair with Choir Boy, of all people, but then it turns out it's not Choir Boy, it's his own brother JT, at least kinda. So I think. So the kind of thing is Tanya apparently was with JT, and JT. I should also explain Duck and JT's. He's kind of bond slash dynamic. JT's definitely he very much like a womanizer, or very much ladies man kind of thing. Always gets the girls and everything. Hashtag can't relate, but nevertheless, so we do see them, and they have a routine going and everything. When it comes to that, but JT also does want to settle down, so he and Doug do have kind of a wager. Whoever gets married first names their children after their brother and everything, and that definitely will come back up. But Doug learns of the affair between Tanya and JT, and that Tanya looks like was going out with JT and everything, but says now that she loves Duck. So JT wants her to confess, but Tanya's not doing that. And so then at the award ceremony, that's when everything. That's pretty much the breaking point. That's pretty much the breaking point, and what leads to the breakup of the heartbeats. So Flash first announced that he's going solo, and that he's leaving. The five heartbeats. But then Duck reveals that he knows about the affair between JT and Tanya, and so he also leaves the heartbeats, and that pretty much causes the heartbeats to dissolve. And I wonder in universe, it's kind of I think it's supposed to be just like a ceremony. At first, I thought it was supposed to be almost like a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, but no, just like a ceremony. He's celebrating the success of the five heartbeats and them signing with a new label and everything. But then this goes down that. Probably if that actually happened in real life, which I'm sure it probably has to an extent, and that would have been one crazy award show. We've seen crazy stuff in award or shows before, or such as who can forget only a couple years ago when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, but that would have been crazy to witness live. Right? But nevertheless, so the five heartbeats do dissolve. Then we see them much later in the 1990s. He's the early 1990s. This movie came out in 91, so I imagine likely in 1991, but the five heartbeats, their time and everything as a group, it took place in the 1960s. So much earlier than obviously much later in the timeline. And the movie actually does open up with at first it's just a random person, a random guy looking at the magazine talking about the five heartbeats. But then as it flashes back to the 90s towards the end of the movie, then we realize that person is Duck. Doug gets a letter from Choir Boy inviting him to his church and saying he has a surprise for him. And so Doug does show up because he hadn't seen Choir Boy in a while, and there he sees Eddie, who's clean. He is converted, and Baby Doll is with him, and they're singing in the church and everything. So, So Eddie's gone to rehab, have cleaned himself up, also not getting none, but yeah, he's cleaned himself up from drugs and alcohol, all as part of the church and everything, and convinces him to reconcile, and I should say Eddie convinces Duck to reconcile with JT, which he does, so they reconcile, and Esther shows back up as well. And the heartbeats essentially reunite at a cookout, and they perform their dance moves and everything as to close out the movies. As for Flash, he has a new group, but it's still singing all those years later, which is crazy to think about. Switching from the doo-wop style of like the '60s and everything to the pops kind of sound of like the '80s and '90s and stuff like that, which is that's kind of how it was. A lot of bands even before the '90s, he's and it kind of was there more so as like a joke or a gag and stuff like that. But that's kind of how a lot of groups were. Like a lot of times they would change their style and everything and to fit the times, because as you know, times are different. Like a lot of the music didn't sound the same from one decade to the next. Like around the '80s and '90s, pop was coming more in. Doo-wop was kind of like slowly being phased out and everything. And then you got into like the more pop sounds, or like the grungier sounds and stuff like that. But that's just like how the music changed. But nevertheless, Five Heartbeats, it's friends again, and able to dance and everything, as the movie fades out, of course. And but so that is the movie, and I know kind of like I said, kind of all over the place when it comes to that hat. But now getting into what I liked and disliked about the movie, starting with what I liked. You can definitely tell. And it kind of was stated this movie definitely based off of at least the characters and their dynamics and everything, based off a lot of the groups, especially from like the Motown era. So groups like the Temptations or the Dells and stuff like that. And and actually the wiki lists a number of artists who like the characters were based off, that being like the Dells, the Temptations, the Four Tops, Wilson Pickett, James Brown, Frankie Lyman, Sam Cooke, just to name a few. So you can definitely see that influence and a lot of like their tragic stories that they went through. And the Temptations, because as of course I definitely grew up watching the Temptations, technically a movie, but more like it's technically a TV miniseries, but I had the DVD and it played the whole thing anyway. So I definitely always consider it a movie, but it technically is a miniseries. But I definitely compared and contrasted from that to this, and you can definitely see some of the similarities, because the Temptation story is also very tragic. Now the Temptations miniseries got a few things wrong, quite a few things wrong, which is what led to them and Otis Williams, that being the people who produced the miniseries, and Otis Williams, who wrote the book. Of course, Otis Williams, the last surviving member of the classic Five Temptations, led to them being sued and everything by like David Ruffin's estate and Melvin Franklin's mother. But nevertheless, but you can definitely see that influence, but that's not a bad thing because you definitely you definitely resonate with the characters. You definitely feel for them. Like you feel the dynamic. They definitely feel like a group that definitely went through some times together, and it definitely felt tragic. It didn't feel like five strangers. They really felt like they had that bond, that friendship, that brotherhood. But they really wanted to help each other out. How like when Eddie's going through his addiction, they didn't just kick him to the curb, kick him to the side. They tried their best to help him out, and seeing his redemption story as well, going from where he was being like the lead singer of the being the lead singer of the Five Heartbeats to who the drug and alcohol addiction to getting clean, converting to Christianity, stuff like that. You definitely feel happy for him that he turned his life around. You feel happy when Duck and JT reconcile. And you definitely you're happy to see it for them, and it's characters you really want, there's characters that obviously aren't real, but you definitely want to be real. And I think the actors definitely pull off the role as well, especially Leon. Yes, Leon is in this movie as JT. Yes, that Leon who would go on to play David Ruffin in the Temptations and technically miniseries. But I might just call it Temptations movie. but yeah, Leon definitely he stole the show. Oh, not quite as much as Eddie, but he definitely stole the show. And the thing is, comparing him here versus how he portrayed David Ruffin, still did really well here. But by the time we get to the Temptations miniseries, just even more seasoned. Which that's 7 years later, and in the 7 years he definitely honed his craft just even more. Like he does really good right in this role, but then does really great in the David Ruffin role. And I imagine this probably is what helped him get the role. But yeah, so the dynamic between these characters and their chemistry and everything, I think is what really he makes this movie he stand out, and really he makes it an enjoyable watch. It's characters that you almost want to be real. When they're at their lows, they are definitely low, but when they're at their highs, you feel happy for them. When they're riding high and doing well and stuff like that, you definitely it's definitely awesome to see. And I think a lot of it does come down to how the characters are written and how they interact with each other. It feels real. You want the characters to be real. Like you would love for the characters to be real, because they almost feel real, and we even can see some of ourselves in them. A lot of times we do have people that we fell out with, and it's kind of for an understandable reason. Like Duck's about to marry he's someone that the woman that he loves, the woman that he cares about, just for her to be he kind of stolen from him by his own brother, even though JT technically had her first, but then I guess is like leaving him for Doug. Admittedly, that part was a little, well, I did get it kind of lost there, but I think that's more so just like a me thing. But as characters you definitely resonate with it to an extent, and there's a lot of people who have been at the lowest, kind of like Eddie, who things have turned around for them and they are living their best lives. Another person I can kind of compare it to, and this is the third wrestling reference I'm making in this video, and it probably won't be the last, but Big Bill and his story, going from his substance abuse stemming from his time in WWE, he ballooning in weight when he's on the indies, to when he joined DDP Yoga, turned his life around, and turned his life around, got super real jacked, and to see how well he's doing now, how in AEW and everything, and it's awesome to see. So that story of redemption, and there's a lot of different stories being told, and I think all of them are told really well, and you definitely feel for the characters. Like the emotions you're supposed to feel for the characters, I think, is felt where you definitely want to root for them. You're happy for them, and when they're up and and when they're down, you're kind of down there with him. And so I think all that is done really, really well. And of course the music, even though it's a bit more in-house, like creating the band and for the sake of like the music and the soundtrack and everything, including having them do having them perform even for like promotional work for the movie, I think was a very smart idea. But even that just makes them stand out even more. And like I said, they were influenced by like the aforementioned artists I mentioned, such as like the Temptations and everything. But that's definitely not a bad thing. If I had to find something to nitpick about the movie, as I usually do, perhaps I wish like Choir Boy and Dresser were fleshed out a little bit more. That or like, hey, you definitely kind of gets their like you get their kind of characterization sometimes, but I do wish they were fleshed out a little bit more. Like they didn't get nearly as much development as Eddie or Duck or JT. Duck is kind of like the de facto leader in some way. Is with him writing the songs, playing the piano, and everything. And, but otherwise, yeah, Dresser and Choir Boy, I wanted to see a little more development from them when it comes to character. And I do wish his Big Red got a little bit more. Like Big Red, we see him become corrupt and or we see his like corrupt nature and everything, and then we see him taken, and he is taken to jail for his crimes. Like it's exposed and everything after or Eddie's confronted and confesses everything. Then kind of off screen in off screen Big Red is like jailed and everything. But I do wish we got a little bit more development from him. But maybe that's just me. But the other thing is, and this is something that some critics have brought up, but I do kind of agree. Like having a lot of music montages, it makes sense, but at the same time, it did come at the cost of some of the character development, which does kind of suck. So I wish we got a little bit more of the in between stuff. I imagine it was so that the movie didn't drag, and so you got from place to place without having it to drag on. And the Temptations movie did do that quite a bit as well, but not quite as much. But I do wish you got a little bit more. But maybe that's just me. But nevertheless, that's going to do it for this review. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Happy Mother's Day once again. And Mom, if you're watching this, Happy Mother's Day to you. I love you from the bottom of my heart. But nevertheless, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor. Like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and turn on post notifications so you know every time I upload a video so you can see as soon as it drops. And let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the movie, my review of the movie. Did you like the movie? Did you like my review of the movie? Let me know. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.